Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Sunday night video. This week I am doing a little walk around St Alban's Churchyard in Earsdon. I am mainly doing a walk in this particular video to the Hartley Pit Memorial, and I am also going to have a look, if I can get to it anyway, some of the individual graves that are in the area as well from that disaster. I will be doing another video in this churchyard as well, around the main part of the church. But before I get into that part, obviously, like I always say, if you do enjoy this video, then please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here or you haven't already done so, then do please consider subscribing to the channel to help support the content we create. It's completely free to subscribe, it doesn't cost you anything, but it does help to support the channel. So as you can see, I'm walking along a little footpath. Now, when the memorial was actually put in place, because the Hartley Pit disaster was 1862, this churchyard did look very, very different. And I've actually just spotted a very worn gravestone there. It's very worn at the back, from weather worn I would assume, but it does look very strange. But it would have been a lot more open land, and if you've ever seen any of the engravings of, which is what pictures were called in those days, of the actual burial, you would see that all of this area here was much more open and there wasn't very much around at all. But now obviously the churchyard's used for many, many, many years, and obviously lots more people are buried here, so it's a lot more filled in, shall we say. So as you come down these steps, which I'm like, yeah, hopefully I can do them without looking where I'm going, you are actually seeing the memorial right in front of you. And that's actually the church bells there. You might be able to hear that. That is saying 3 o'clock, and it's absolutely right. So the Hartley Pit disaster, as I said, took place in 1862, and there were 204 men and boys who lost their lives in that disaster. Now, I'm not going to tell the full story at the moment, because I will do a video about that disaster at a later date. And two of my family, which I'd only just found out about recently, were killed in that disaster. So this is another side of the monument. You can see all the names on the front there, and if I get a little bit closer you can see there's the church bells again. You can see on there how the names are done. So they've got various different sort of abbreviated names, so you can work them out. Obviously JN would be John, WM would be William, and AR is probably Arthur. So it was done like that, I assume, because it would have been incredibly expensive to get the names put on, and obviously it would have been slightly cheaper to have had abbreviated names. So as you come round to the other side, you'll see that there are more names on this side as well, and as you can see, there are some that are quite young. You can see one there. I'm just going to zoom up on it there, and that one was John Sharp, who was only 13 years old. So it was a lot of boys as well as men. And there are more names on the back of the memorial, which I'll try and get from the other side, because I am not going to go clambering through those lovely nettles, because that's something that I really don't want to walk through at the moment. Now, unfortunately, behind me, from behind the monument and to the side of the monument, you can see a lot of headstones. Now, a lot of these headstones were actual individual headstones for those who were killed in the disaster. Now, if I get up to this one, which is probably the only one I can get, you can see on there that it says basically Christopher, the son of Thomas and Isabella Wanless, who lost his life in the Hartley Pit disaster in January of 1862, aged 20, and their son Thomas, and also John, who all died in the same disaster. Now unfortunately, as you can see, it is rather overgrown here at the moment, so it's going to be fairly impossible for me to clamber around in there to have a look at any of those headstones. But I can assure you that quite a lot of the people that were buried did have headstones. They actually did have their own headstones. Now basically, if you have, as I've said before, seen any of the engravings from the burial time of the disaster, you will probably know that everybody was buried in this sort of location that I'm looking at now. There are a couple that were put in a slightly different place, but this may have been the fact that they already had a family grave, so they would have gone there. So a lot of the graves in this area, and if you look at the headstones tend to be that sort of shape, because that is a disaster one, I know, because I've looked at them all before. They do tend to be that sort of shape. Now I'm not sure, because until I do the actual story and do a lot more research into the story, I'm not sure of whether they were provided by the coal company, the people who owned Hartley Pit, which is why the headstones are all the same. I'm not actually certain about that, but I did notice when I looked previously that the headstones for the disaster victims did all have that similar sort of shape, and that one that I showed you just before, that has the same shape as well. Now as you can see, if I just zoom in a little bit, you can see that's all brambles. There is no way, not a chance, I'm going to clamber through that, because that's, and obviously some of those nettles are huge, so I'm not going to climb through that. We've now got a siren, which I hope you can't hear. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk round to the other side and have a look at the back on the other side where the other names are that I couldn't see from the side that I was on before. Now as I say, I know that 2 of my family members were killed in this disaster, and I wasn't certain as to whether or not they had their own headstones, and I would like to have a look later on, but at the moment I think that it's a little bit too overgrown for us to go and investigate that. But if I ever find out, if they have headstones, I will put a link to that in, well, just put a mention in the comments after I've shared this. So this is the other side of the memorial. So the strange dark pattern that kind of looks like as if it would be like a wreath or something like that hanging over the top, I think that's just basically weather worn, basically, is all that is. So again, you can see down there you've got a young boy there, Henry, I would assume that was Henry Hunter, who again was only 13 years old. And then you've got on this side, just slightly further along, I'm climbing over some of the brambles, you have actually got, when that focuses, which it doesn't want to, there you go, you've got William Walker, who was actually only 12 years old. And then above that you've also got William Wilson, who was also only 12 years old. It hasn't, there it is, William Wilson, who was also only 12 years old. So a lot of them were really, really young, which was quite common at the time. There was no rules and regulations back then for ages where you could and couldn't work in the collieries. It was brought in at a later date, because even prior to that there was children as young as 5 years old, which if you've watched any of the Wall's End Pit disaster stories that I've covered, you will know that one of the disasters there was at least one boy of only 5 years old who was in the disaster and died. Now I'm just going to walk a little bit further down. It's a bit of a muddy path, but I am just going to walk down a little bit so that I can turn around and look back, so that you can get a better view of the monument, so that you can see it a little bit better, because obviously when I was close up to it you can't see it quite as well. So I'm just going to turn round and get a different view of the monument, so that I can, basically, you can see it all. But there's going to be somebody in the way, but I'll just do it like that. So there's one over the trees. You can see that the monument is at the top of the bank. So there you go, that's the monument there. So it is quite impressive, and it was put up pretty much fairly quickly after the disaster. A lot of other areas where they've had pit disasters and things like that, they've had to wait years to get a proper monument, whereas this one was put up relatively quickly. It was even brought to the attention, this disaster, of Queen Victoria. And when I get a chance, I will go to the other Hartley Pit Memorial site and show you that, because that's a more recent memorial, and it is absolutely amazing what they've done there to remember all of those who sadly lost their lives. Because it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, I always believe that those who lost their lives simply doing their jobs should never ever be forgotten. So I do hope that you have found this little video interesting, and as I say, if I get a chance to get into there where it's all overgrown later in the year when it's all being cut back, because everywhere has a tendency now to leave things to grow wild for the wildlife, for the bees, etc. I will have a look inside, but I've actually just spotted another similar shaped headstone, so I'm just wondering if this is one from the disaster. So I'm risking that nettle, which is going to be right upon me, but there we go. So yes, and it's actually, ow, that nettle got me. Oh, and I just find a dock leaf. So yes, this is to the memory of Thomas Dawson, who lost his life in the Hartley Pit disaster by the fatal calamity of the engine beam break-in on the 16th of January 1862, age 49. And also his son John, who lost his life by the same misfortune, aged 12 years, and also his son-in-law, who lost his life at the same time, aged 22 years. So as I said, it is quite common, the shape of the headstones, to give you. So spotting that one, I had a feeling that it possibly was. So anyway, I'm going to risk getting past this horrible nettle. Oh, it was that one that got me. Evil. Right, so hope you have enjoyed this short little video, and I do thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again very soon.